Ever wonder what actually separates folks who build true generational wealth from those who constantly find themselves stuck in that endless paycheck-to-paycheck cycle? I mean, is it just blind luck, a massive salary, or maybe some secret insider knowledge? Well, actually, the research shows it really just comes down to a highly systematic, disciplined approach to personal finance. Hello, team, and welcome. Today, we're going to completely unpack exactly how that financial discipline actually works behind the scenes. Welcome to this comprehensive explainer on mastering personal finance. Today, we are going to build what we call the wealth-building pyramid, and we're doing it from the ground up. We'll be thoroughly exploring the data, the specific strategies, and most importantly, the psychology behind highly effective money management so that you have a complete picture. Let's dive right in. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Building your financial foundation. 2. Mastering the 50-30-20 rule. 3. Proven wealth-building strategies. 4. Value versus growth investing. 5. The psychology of investing. And 6. Overcoming behavioral bias traps. All right, starting right off with Section 1, Building Your Financial Foundation. Before we can even think about aggressively growing our wealth, we absolutely have to protect it. Makes sense, right? All wealth starts with a rock-solid foundation of controlling your spending and creating a buffer against sudden, totally unexpected financial shocks. And that buffer is your emergency fund. As outlined by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this is simply money specifically set aside for the unexpected. You know, things like a fender bender, a sudden medical bill, or a temporary loss of income. But here's a crucial point that so many people miss. You shouldn't be afraid to actually use this money when emergencies hit. It's literally designed to be a financial shock absorber. If you spend it down, no problem. You simply rebuild it. That is exactly what keeps you out of crippling high-interest debt when life inevitably happens. Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering the 50-30-20 rule. So, a great question here is, how do we actually find the cash, month to month, to build that safety net and eventually invest? Enter the classic 50-30-20 budgeting rule. It's incredibly straightforward. 50% of your income goes straight to needs. These are your fixed costs, like rent, EMIs, and electricity bills. Then, 30% goes to wants. These are the fun discretionary expenses like dining out or those daily, slightly overpriced coffees. And that leaves a very crucial 20% that is dedicated entirely to savings and debt repayment. By explicitly classifying and tracking your expenses this way, you ensure that you are systematically saving, pretty much regardless of what your actual income level is. Let's put some real numbers to this theory with an excellent real-world example from HDFC Life. Consider Sarah. She earns 60,000 rupees per month. Applying our rule, she allocates 50%, so that's 30,000 rupees, directly to essentials like her rent and groceries. She allocates 30%, or 18,000 rupees, to her lifestyle choices. And crucially, she actively saves that remaining 20%, which is a solid 12,000 rupees every single month. This structured approach creates just incredible stability. Think about it. She isn't just blindly hoping to have money left over at the end of the month. She actually has a mathematical system strictly controlling her cash flow. Now for the fun part. Section 3, Proven Wealth-Building Strategies. Okay, so you've got your cash flow dialed in. Now we reach the true structure phase of our pyramid. How do we actively grow that 20% we're now saving every month? Well, one of the absolute most efficient methods out there is the 3-fund portfolio. Championed by quantitative financial innovators over at SoftPak Financial Systems, this specific strategy completely abandons the highly unpredictable, stressful game of trying to pick individual winning stocks. Instead, it uses just 3 broad market index funds to essentially capture the growth of the entire market. It is highly cost-effective, it scales beautifully as your wealth grows, and it is just beautifully simple to manage over a timeline of several decades. Which brings us to Section 4, Value versus Growth Investing. Now, some of you might want to get a bit more hands-on and pick specific sectors. If you do go that route, data from Emeritus highlights 2 main philosophical approaches you need to understand. Growth investing focuses entirely on high growth potential, very often in sectors like tech or biotech, seeking rapid revenue expansion, even though it comes with much higher volatility. Value investing, on the other hand, is a bit more conservative. It focuses on finding fundamentally sound companies in established, maybe less glamorous sectors like financials or industrials that are currently just undervalued by the broader market. Value investors don't chase the daily hype. They patiently wait for the market to eventually correct a pricing mistake, usually over a longer horizon of 5 years or more. If you do decide to go down the value investing route, it takes a very structured 4-step process to get it right. It all starts with building financial literacy. You absolutely have to be able to read income statements and balance sheets. There's no way around it.
Next, use stock screening tools to filter the market for attractive metrics. That leads directly into step 3, deep fundamental research to ensure the target company actually has a durable economic moat and consistent earnings over time. Finally, you calculate the intrinsic value using metrics like price-to-earnings ratios or complex discounted cash flow models. The golden rule here? You literally only ever buy when the current stock price sits significantly below that intrinsic value you just calculated.
And that leads us into totally different territory. Section 5, the psychology of investing.
So, we've completely nailed down the math and the strategy. But here is the absolute most dangerous part of the pyramid. The elephant in the room, really. Confronting our own human psychology. If the math is so incredibly simple, why do highly educated, incredibly successful professionals still lose massive amounts of money in the market? Because it happens literally all the time. The answer lies entirely in behavioral finance, a field which studies the deep cognitive biases that are constantly short-circuiting our rational brains.
One of the biggest culprits here is loss aversion. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman actually demonstrated that a financial loss feels approximately twice as painful as an equivalent gain feels pleasurable. Think about that for a second. The emotional devastation of losing 10,000 pounds is quite literally double the joy of gaining 10,000 pounds. Because of this outsized emotional pain, investors will routinely hold on to losing investments for far, far too long. They just sit there hoping to simply break even so they don't have to formally admit a loss, rather than logically selling and redeploying that capital into far better opportunities.
Then you've got this little mental trap called anchoring. This is the tendency to give massively disproportionate weight to a specific, often arbitrary, reference point. The most common anchor, the purchase price. Investors will constantly say, well, I bought this share at $50, it's now sitting at $35, I just can't sell it yet. But here's the brutal, honest truth. The market absolutely does not care what you paid for a stock. It has no memory of your transaction. Your purchase price is completely irrelevant compared to the asset's current fair value and its realistic future potential. Holding on to a fundamentally bad asset just because your anchor price happens to be higher is an absolute recipe for long-term wealth destruction. Another big one is herding. Basically, it's that biological urge we all have to just follow the crowd, taking deep psychological comfort in knowing that everyone else is doing the exact same thing. It creates massive, irrational market momentum and leads directly to wildly overvalued market peaks. And today, let's be honest, social media heavily amplifies this effect. If a specific asset is generating massive hype in your group chats or exploding on message boards, that is precisely the signal that herding is occurring in real time, and the asset might be dangerously overvalued.
All right, let's fix this. Section 6, overcoming behavioral bias traps.
Just being aware of these traps isn't going to cut it. We need actual, actionable solutions to actively correct these cognitive pitfalls. The wealth experts at Global Investments offer some incredibly specific, structured methods to overcome these exact traps. To fight overconfidence, they recommend maintaining an investment diary to explicitly record your reasoning before a trade, which creates instant personal accountability. To beat anchoring, you have to deliberately ignore your purchase price entirely and simply ask yourself, is this the best use of my capital at today's price? You protect yourself from herding by conducting completely independent analysis far away from pure hype. And finally, to defeat confirmation bias, you have to actively and deliberately seek out the bearish case. Find highly credible people who entirely disagree with your investment thesis and actually listen to their arguments.
I want to wrap up this whole bias section by talking about the trap of mental accounting. This is when we treat a year-end bonus or a sudden inheritance completely differently than we treat our regular paycheck. We tend to get very reckless with what feels like found money. The fix here is to build a completely unified picture of your total wealth. You have to treat all your money uniformly as one complete integrated picture, because ultimately, a dollar is a dollar entirely regardless of the specific pot it came from.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Take a hard look at your own daily habits, your current savings rate, and your portfolio right now. Ask yourself honestly, are you actively controlling your money using structured frameworks, or are your cognitive biases secretly controlling you behind the scenes? Building true generational wealth is about having the discipline to save, the strategy to grow, and most importantly, the self-awareness to protect it all from your own mind. Thank you so much, team, for joining me on this deep dive. Take these frameworks, apply them to your own lives, and start building that pyramid today.
If you want to understand all of this in greater depth, step by step, with real-world examples in rupees and a focus on the Indian context, then I have written a comprehensive book on the subject, titled The Freedom of Compounding, The Complete Guide to Personal Finance and Investing to Grow Your Money. Exponentially Through Compounding. It is now available on Amazon. In it, I cover key topics such as compounding, SIPs versus lump sum investments, comparisons among PPF, EPF, and NPS, tax regime decisions, CIBIL scores, and the mindset shifts essential for everyone. It serves as a roadmap, suitable both for beginners and for those who already understand investing but are looking for a structured plan. The link is in the description. Check it out now.